Hi, friends. Welcome to the Cuppa Joe show. Today, I have a very special guest in the carpenter shop with us, Celia Chin. So as we like to always ask all of our guests, Celia, how do you like your coffee? And tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became a hairstylist.
I like water, John. It's like, so sorry, I
You're a water drinker.
love it.
Well, that's very good.
Only
Very
that's
healthy.
fasting. That's why I like water a lot. Um, well, I started as a, let's see, I have to first say that this is very important. And I just kept getting this thought all day today that I have to mention that my mom, when she was pregnant, they told her that I was to be aborted. And I don't like to get emotional, but I never knew this until about just a few years ago before she died. She told me, she said they had told her they told her that I should not be born because she would die in the process. So that was really important because my mother said she chose to believe that God would take care of it, and he did. So that's really important. And I had to get that out of the way because I think that God blessed her and blessed myself many, many years because of my mother's faith. And it started at 6 years old. I always knew I wanted to be a hairdresser. I felt it was a calling, a vocation, and it just took off from there. And I think I always wanted to make the world better looking and change the world. And my dad would see it with me combing my little neighbor's hair, and they'd come in one way and go out looking better the other way. And then it got to be promoted up to dolls, using dolls. And that was the start of it. And then in high school, I won the scholarship to go to beauty school. And when I graduated and got into beauty school, I really, really I loved what I was doing, and I felt I was at home at last. And that's how it all started.
Well, that's beautiful. Well, we'll come back to what you mentioned. So for our friends who are watching today, Celia's in Wichita, Kansas. I'm coming to you from Hong Kong time zone, and where Celia is, it's Tuesday, and where I am, it's Wednesday, the day of St. Joseph. So the sun is coming up here and the sun is going down where Celia is. And Celia, you mentioned that beautiful story of how your mom had a medical issue where the doctors told her that she should do an abortion. So I'm super thankful that she didn't. And here you are, praise God. But you also live in Wichita. So those that may not know, can you tell us that besides being the world's aviation capital, what's the negative thing that Wichita is known for?
Abortion. We were the abortion capital when George Tiller was alive. And we used to go out there and pray. I started going out there in 1981. And that was the start of having the courage to speak out and be seen on Kellogg, which is a very busy street, praying the rosary. It took a lot of courage because at that time I was considered a VIP. I didn't say that, but all my customers said it. And they kept saying, we need a VIP out on site at Tiller's. And I'm going, well, I don't know anybody that would do that. And so I ended up going out there, and it was my parish priest, Father John Rickemeyer. And he was the very first one to start out at Wesley praying the rosary in front of Wesley in 1973. And then he was from my parish, but I never really knew that. I didn't really care. At the time, I was usually the last one in the church and the first one out the door. I didn't like fasting. I didn't like praying. I just kind of dreaded Sundays. And people find that hard to believe, but I think it's important that people know that, because my vision was I wanted to be another Vidal Sassoon, and I wanted to be rich and famous, and I wanted to be somebody. So I thought that Hollywood would be the perfect spot for me. And so I started traveling all over the world, getting education, volunteering all over the city, doing everything that I could do to promote my profession. And, because I actually loved it. Worked in theater, the ballet. I even worked on 3 years with the television people and helped them to become #1. It was just incredible, all the experiences I've had. but I felt like I had to do that because I wanted to give back. And also I helped a lot of unborn, the mothers that were single mothers. I would help them by doing their hair for free and things like that. So it was all around, anything I could do to help and give back to the community, I did as well.
Well, that's wonderful. It's really beautiful that I know you're really involved in the pro-life work there in Wichita, and it's very timely too, especially with the recent news of the U.S. Supreme Court hopefully going to overturn Roe v. Wade. Now, Celia, I'll bring up this picture here. You sent me a few pictures of some maybe famous people that you've done their hair. So can you just kind of give us a thumbnail sketch of what are some of these photos that we're looking at here in the carpenter shop?
Well, what happened was they needed some help. The pageant girls from Kansas. I was watching TV one day and I was astonished at how bad they looked because their hair and makeup was terrible. And I was telling my friend, it was a customer, I said, boy, I wish I could help them because they really need help because they could look better. So luckily she was the consultant for the fashion part of it. So this was a Miss America program. So I started helping them out because they told me, put your money where your mouth is. So I did. I said, okay, I'll do it. So I ended up working with all the girls that competed and gave them workshops. And I thought, well, this will be good. I think I will do this until we win. And so we kept going to Miss America every year in Atlantic City. And it was kind of hard because a lot of the hairdressers would say, okay, well, where are you from? And, we tell them, and I'd say Kansas. And they like look at me and kind of walk off. So I thought, this is ridiculous. We need to have some respect here. So I started name dropping just because I was trying to be honoring, And I let them know, hey, I've been in Paris. I've been studied with Alexander of Paris. I studied with Sassoon. And I just kind of went on until I kind of had to make a name because Kansas was pretty low on the totem pole and we only had one or two winners. So I just started going back every year. And then I saw Donald Trump there. He hosted many of our workshops, not him himself, but his places were used for us to come as hairdressers because almost every state ended up going every year to help the girl and work with her and their states. So that's kind of how it all started. Then I crossed over and started helping the Miss USA pageant, and this is locally. And next thing you know, I find out that they're going to have the world telecast in Wichita at the very same time of Summer of Mercy. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is a chance to really do something. And some of my priest friends kept saying, why are you so busy doing pageants when you should be out here working on site? And I said, Father, you have no idea what I'm doing and what God is doing. He used the pageant to spread the message of divine mercy. And that's a whole story you'll have to read in my book because it would take too long to tell. But different things started happening and I started realizing I can really help these girls. And one of the questions that was always brought up was, what are your thoughts on abortion? And I always told the girls, as a coach and a hairdresser, I would say, you tell them what you feel. If you really truly are against it, don't say, I am personally against it, but don't say that. You be who you are because the judges aren't there to judge you. They're there to judge who you are and what you stand for. So I helped a lot of the girls because a lot of them were very afraid to say that they were pro-life. Because as you know, sometimes there's some kind of a negative part of that. So I was very bold and I let them know it. So, but I did it lovingly.
Well, that's beautiful. So you're part hairstylist and part coach. And you mentioned something about a book. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. Well, we might have to do that later because there's a lot more that led up to the book. But a lot of it started when my husband left me. I was 7 months pregnant, another pro-life issue. And then that's when I turned to God, and that's how it started. I started going to churches looking for consolation, and all the doors were locked, especially at Cathedral. I went there and I was banging on the door saying, I don't understand, why is this door closed? And that's when the Lord called me to start Perpetual Adoration because the doors were locked and I was hurting so bad and I needed God, and he wasn't there. I couldn't get in the door. So I just said one day I'm going to do something about this. And boy, God took me up on that.
That's beautiful, Cecilia. Now, Celia, you mentioned divine mercy, and it's providential that that's just one picture that I randomly found here off the internet. And that segues perfectly into my next question, which is about adoration. So, Celia, as a modern day apostle of adoration, please tell us how many adoration chapels you've helped start, your secret, and how does St. Joseph play in?
Well, St. Joseph was the first founder of perpetual adoration because he was the first adorer. He had Jesus human and was always taking care of him, and he was always in his presence. So it only made sense to me that St. Joseph would be the one to turn to. And he really, truly helped us. There were just two of us women, and both of us were divorced. And you know, it was pretty tough when we first started because the priest we worked with, he could only come so many times. He said, I have to take care of the world. And you guys keep calling me back to Wichita. So you need to do this. But we said, Father, we're both divorced. You know, how's that going to look? And he said, don't worry about it. He said, the Blessed Mother will help you and you'll get through it. So, but there was some whiplash. So people would talk about like, well, you know, you're divorced. What are you doing up here? So little things like that. I mean, but actually it's through the suffering and the brokenness that God was able to use us. And the key was fasting. I knew that I could not speak over the pulpit during the homily time because that's when the priest would give us 10 minutes. And I thought, I can't do this until I get myself healed from everything that I went through. So in discussing it with my clients, you know, when they started going through adultery or divorces or whatever, God started healing me as I would share my story with the women. The same with the churches. When I would heal and tell the story of my life over the pulpit in just about 3 to 4 minutes, it drew so many people to God because they felt a calling to go and make a holy hour. And before we even do any of that, we usually, because we're lay people, we would do a 40-day fast in preparation for the parish. And we would get so many people signing up. But without that 40 days of preparation, we couldn't do it. And the priest, you know, he could come in and just do it and start it and get all that. But we weren't priests. Now we were just lay people. And so we probably got over 60 adoration chapels started throughout Kansas. And then there were a lot.
Wait, slow down. How many?
There were 60 that we know of that we started.
60. Wow. So Celia, you went from wanting to go visit Jesus and the doors were locked at the church. Mm-hmm. So basically 0 adoration chapels.
No, there was one, but I didn't know anything about it.
Okay. Okay. So there was one when you started, and now there's 60.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty good.
So corrector, I get things done when I want something done. And I knew God wanted it because he called me. That was one of your questions. You said, how do you know? A person knows when God calls you to a specific assignment. I knew it with all my heart, and nobody was going to stop us. And it really, the Blessed Mother is the one responsible for this because I was involved with Legion of Mary. And every month we got together with all the other Legion of Marys, which was a curia once a month. And every month I would talk about how we were doing with one chapel. We were going to ask people to pray for the next chapel. And it just kind of blossomed from there. And it was the Blessed Mother that did it. And our Bishop Gerber at the time, had no clue how it happened because all the bishops were asking him at the bishops' conference, how did you guys get so many chapels? Who did this? How did it happen? So he called my friend Alice Schonifer and he said, Alice, I need to talk to you and your helper because I have no clue how this happened in Kansas. And I did it personally because I wanted to do something to stop abortion. And I'm telling you, many times when I said anything, especially in California, this nun came and told me, don't talk about abortion. You know, that's not acceptable. I go, but why do you think I'm here? I did this personally because I was going to be aborted and she didn't know what to say. But all those pains, you know, I was able to use it. And that's what drove me. I was so grateful that, you know, that I wasn't aborted. And I never knew it. I had no clue why I had such a passion against abortion. And several people asked me, and I thought every time I talk about it, I still cry because I still cry for the people that are doing abortions every day. And so it's in my heart. It really hurts Jesus. So it's very easy to start adoration when you have that passion inside of you that you want to heal and help Jesus to be, you know, just this kind of reparation. That's basically what it is. And believe me, there is a lot of suffering, John, when you take on, not everybody will go through this, but I have a very colorful past. And because God called me out to start adoration, I had no clue how much suffering would be involved, no clue. But I would do it all again. I mean, unbelievable, the pains of losing a husband and then losing my salon and losing, I mean, there's constant things. My car never worked. I could never catch up with my bills because it was constant. And one time this lady, she volunteered and gave me money to get my roof fixed. Next thing I know, it's like the worst possible weekend that I could have chosen for the roofers to come and remove everything because it rained and we had over 100 tornadoes that weekend. I couldn't believe it. I thought, this can't be happening. But it was just one thing after the other. And people that knew me, they go, how do you keep going? I said, well, I go to the Adoration Chapel every day. My son got on drugs. And just one thing after the other. And, you know, I was just falsely accused of I was taking care of my elderly dad, and I was falsely accused 3 times of abuse, of elderly abuse. It just went on and on and on. But you know what? I got stronger and stronger and stronger. And the suffering is nothing when you can turn around and see the results. I mean, we brought so many people back into the church. I even went to the jails. We started a St. Joseph, St. Joseph inmates. And we even got people to come back into the faith in Leavenworth and different places that I went. It was all God. I mean, he did it all. I just said, okay, Lord, whatever you want. But each time there was a cross, and the cross got heavier and heavier. And I just thought, but where would I go? Where would I go if I couldn't do this for the Lord? You know, so it's just reparation, but it makes you stronger. And I strongly suggest anybody going through any kind of problem, go to Jesus and he'll help you. And St. Joseph, of course. So
that's awesome. I want to come back to a couple of points that you mentioned there. But first, I think it might be good if we backtrack a little bit. And maybe for someone who's never even heard of adoration before, maybe someone's watching our show today who's not a Catholic Christian, maybe they're agnostic and they don't even know what they're looking at. So could you explain to our viewers, what is this image that we even have here below the Cuppa Joe and some red and blue coming out of it? And there's looks like a white dot in the middle and this gold thing. What is that? And can you explain that? And what is adoration? And what's this thing you call it a holy hour?
absolutely. I have a lot of atheists and a lot of people that are not Catholic. Every day I deal with this. I just flat tell them that little white circle that you see, that's really Jesus. And I explain that he's their body, blood, soul, and divinity. And they look at me like, I said, like, you see me right now and I'm in person. That's how we see Jesus. We're seeing him in person. And I've had many, in fact, we started doing a holy hour with a Presbyterian church because they wanted what we had. And she kept telling me, this was a pastor's wife. He was very well known in Wichita and Kansas. And she said, Celia, every day I look at you and I go, what is it that you have that I don't have? And I said, well, Jesus, and I explained communion. And I do it wherever they're at and they understand, like mostly saying, I'm in person, I'm here, I'm with you. And I tell them the story of like one of the girls that was Protestant. We took her to the chapel one day because she had just had an abortion. And she went several times and she goes, you know what? You have Jesus a different way. It's like he's really there. And we said, bingo, that's it. He is there. And I challenge anybody. I had a very intellectual let's see, he was a Methodist minister. And him and his wife, she was a lax Catholic. She hadn't been to church, Catholic church in a long time. So one day she finds out that her husband was having a kind of an affair on a computer. And she was devastated. And he was devastated because he didn't want that to happen. But she was also suffering from bulimia. And so they said, can we take you out to breakfast and can we go to church with you? And I said, absolutely. So I took him and I told him, I said, what is it that's holding you back from going to the Catholic Church? Because he was really kind of torn. The Methodist Church had gone, where there was women bishops and stuff. So he was really kind of put out. And he said, well, I really have a problem with Mary. I said, great. So I took him to the Adoration Chapel. And before he went in, I said to Jesus, I said, Jesus, sick him and let him love Mary like I love her. And I left. I let him stay there the whole hour. And he came out of that chapel and he goes, Celia, I get it now. I like Mary and I understand it. And he's very, very smart. And I don't know enough theology to convince him, but I thought Jesus could do it. So he was excited after that. And he ended up going, him and his wife took classes under, he's now Bishop Conley, because Conley was a convert to the faith. And he was the right priest to talk to this guy and help him. And he passed away, but before he passed away, he said, I want you to help my daughter come into the faith as well. And his wife, of course, was back in love with St. Joseph. And about a year ago, she came into the Catholic faith, the daughter did, after her dad died. And I had told her what he had said. And so every time I have a question, or I just say, look, I can talk all day, but I said, if you just go and experience this, you will love it. And I even had a federal judge and she said, I'd like to take your place if you ever needed somebody. Well, of course, right away, I let her know I needed somebody. But basically, it's very easy. And I love the atheists myself. I have a lot of them. And they know that there's something there. They feel it. Because I tell them, I said, look, I know Jesus personally. I pray to him every day. He helps me. It's like, he's my best friend. I said, you need to try it. It's incredible. And I said, I know you have church, but just sometime come to my church and let me show you. And God always takes care of it. I don't have to do anything. Just get him there.
It's so beautiful, Celia. Myself, a convert to the Catholic faith, and probably like almost everyone who's become a Catholic Christian, I did it because of John chapter 6. I discovered that Jesus is truly in the Eucharist. And I felt like someone was hiding that secret from me as I grew up Baptist, later Assembly of God, and non-denominational. And, receiving Jesus in Holy Communion, I remember, I think maybe like the third or fourth time, it was there in your town of Wichita at the cathedral. And I came back to my pew. We're sitting like up in the third or fourth pew on the left side. And my wife looked at me and said, why are you crying? And I was smiling. I said, I don't know. I'm just so happy. So it was like happy tears. And then later I discovered also there in Wichita, this thing called Adoration. You could just go out to the chapel and hang out with Jesus. I'm like, this is cool. And so it's one of those kind of hidden secrets of the Catholic Church that still a lot of people don't know about. And besides your 60 Adoration Chapels there in Kansas, friends, Celia also helped us to start an Adoration Chapel, mainly my wife and her. I was just kind of the guy behind the scenes, trying to be like St. Joseph in the shadows. But Celia helped us also start one in Hong Kong. So for friends who are watching right now, and they might hear some of these stories, and I'm sure you have probably a million stories you could tell about, what's happened inside the Adoration Chapel when you bring friends there to adore Jesus for the first time. So for those who are watching and listening, they might be excited to say, hey, maybe I can do this in my own hometown. So for those who might want to try to start an adoration chapel in their parish, wherever in the world they might be, what would be your best advice for them?
First of all, I would definitely pray and ask the Lord to help you to really decipher if you're the one that's supposed to help. And most of the time, if they just even have that little bit, they're usually the ones, like I tell them. I sent you a card with my email information and my phone number. I would love to help anyone that ever feels called to do it. And I usually, with a lot of these people, I was the one that would talk to the people that we were dealing with, because usually it was one or two people. And we would talk a lot on the phone, and I would pre-warn them that the Lord was inviting you to the cross. And it may not be easy, but I would be there to support them and help them get through things. And I didn't want to, I didn't want to say too much, but you had to say something, because there was a little bit of suffering, and a little bit of penance. But to offset that, we could do a lot of fasting and the support of having people around you. And sometimes if you could get more than maybe 5 or 6 people or 10 people, whatever it is, that God handpicks you, you really know. And then you could support each other and go through things together. But it's not hard. I mean, when you know the results, it's phenomenal. And there's no way that you would want to disappoint Jesus. Because now I'm in the mode that I want to fight for Jesus, and I want to do whatever it takes to help others to grow the way that I was given the opportunity to grow. And you have to be joyful, and you have to clean yourself up. You have to stay in grace. If I would strongly suggest people go to adoration every day themselves, if they're going to want to be the ones that start it and prepare the rest of the people, because until you can do it, you can't expect anyone else to do it unless you do it first. So that's where I would start, start going every day to daily mass and holy hour, 1 holy hour. That's what I do now, because you get a lot more done that way. When you make time for Jesus before you go to adoration. Go to adoration and then go to mass. It really works.
Now, Celia, you mentioned that you'd be happy to share your email, and I will put it in the description down below. But can you share that with us now? What is your email?
Yes, it's the letter C, Adoration Chin @AOL.com.
Okay,
Now, here's the other thing. Go ahead. I got to tell you one thing. I'm having a problem with answering people on my email, so I need their phone number. Because if they could just send me that they're interested, then I could call them back. Because that's kind of the things that I have to put up with. Everything breaks down. Every day when I try to help people, something will break down. And that's just part of life. So I know how to get around it. I'm just joyful, happy. I pray the rosary all day in the car. So even if my car doesn't work, I'm praying and thanking Jesus. I've learned to turn it all around and just thank him for all the problems I have.
Well, that's beautiful. And almost as if on cue, as you mentioned the word suffering, I heard a police car go by in the background there. Yep. Where you are.
Yeah.
So, and one time I heard you say that, if you want to help start an adoration chapel, be ready for the cross. And you mentioned how one day your salon caught on fire and all these bad things happen on a day for you. And you said something, well, welcome to the cross, which is the way you said it was like, you're so used to the suffering, and almost in a kind of a fun, childlike way. And it made me think of what you were saying. There's some saint, I can't remember who it was, but some saint, she was having a bad day and she fell down in the mud puddle and got all dirty. And then she said to our Lord, well, I can see why you have so few friends if this is how you treat them.
I say that a lot. In fact, it was your Adoration Chapel. We had just done an 80-day fast. And I walked into the salon across the street where I'm at now, and the whole place was full of gas, and I had a tremendous headache. So I knew that something was wrong. So I called the landlord, and he came and he said, oh my gosh, she said, last week it was your air conditioner and that's $4,000 to fix. So now it's the heater and they told them they had to fix it or we couldn't work. He said, you're out of here. He said, you got a month to find another place. And I just went into the back room and I started laughing. I said, oh my God. And then it called, your wife called me and she says, oh, happy day. We just finished our fasting. And I think I broke down and I just said, and I just lost my shop after 36 years. But I never stopped fasting. I never stopped. I mean, you guys kept me going because it meant so much to me that you guys wanted to start it in Hong Kong, because the man I married was Chinese and his whole family was from China and none of them were baptized or Christian. So it was just very special to me that you were able to call me and we could work on it together. And I actually got my ex-father-in-law baptized because these friars told me, go do it yourself if you can't get a priest. And I did. We had him baptized before he died. So that was a gift. And that was all around the same time as the fasting that I did for you.
That's beautiful. I was going to ask you, someone living in Kansas, how did you come by the name Chin? Because when I say Celia Chin, it sounds like someone here in Asia where I am, in China. So, well, it's a small world. What part of China was your former husband from?
Well, it wasn't my husband. It was my ex-father-in-law. I'm not really sure. He didn't really tell. Well, he probably told me, but it's been like 41 years ago. So I don't know. I don't remember. But he's remarried since, and we're still close with his new wife from China. So I will find out because I'd like to know that myself. But it's really interesting because I went to Japan and I was the first American student there at an advanced school of hair design. And I came back and I fell in love with the Asian people. I just couldn't believe how wonderful they were and kind to me. And that's when I met my ex-husband. He came into the salon and I heard this little voice say, when you look up, you're going to be looking at your future husband. And I couldn't believe it because he was really handsome. I didn't look Chinese at all. In fact, I made him show me his ID because I didn't believe it. But that was part of the reason he left me, because he didn't want to go to church anymore with me on Sundays, but he did while we were dating. And he said, it's me or him. And I said, him. And that was it. You know, he was agnostic. So I was sure that I could win him over, but I wasn't living the way I should have been anyway. So, you know how you have to learn that. And so that's why he left. And I thought, man, if he could see me now, you know, starting out. In fact, a couple of times when I was invited to San Francisco, he was living there and he picked up my son and he said, so what are you doing in town? And I said, you wouldn't believe what I'm doing here, because I always shared my testimony. And then that's how we would get Adoration started, you know. So that was a beautiful gift that I was able to go to San Francisco and Arizona, where his mom lived. And she asked the same question, what are you doing here? And I just said, you would be very surprised, because I was talking about my life and the testimony, because when I married my cross. And that was huge for me, because if it wouldn't have been for him leaving, I don't know that I would have ever started Adoration. So he really led me to the Lord and he didn't even know it.
Well, Celia, that reminds me of something I heard recently by Christopher West, and all those times of suffering that you talked about, and then also those young ladies who you coached as you were doing their hair, and on the topic of abortion, it made me think of this quote from Christopher West, who he said that grace flows through wounds. He was talking about, you know, our Lord on the cross and his wounds, and how also in our own lives, our own wounds, some wounds that we're not very proud of, somehow God in his beautiful, mysterious, awesome love can let grace flow through even the worst of our wounds. And I think you're just a living testimony of that. You say it so beautifully and so eloquently. And as you were talking, it made me think a lot about St. Joseph, because he's had a few bad days. I mean, can you imagine you know, he has to wake up Mary one night, probably like around midnight, and say, "Hey, honey, we got to go. We're going to go to a different country, Egypt. Don't worry. Pack your bag. I got the mule ready. Let's go." The donkey's ready. Donkey's warmed up. We'll hop on and we'll get out of town. So and for him, it was probably just one bad day after another, with the Herod's assassins, fleeing from them. But with that said, I mean, all that bad stuff that was happening to St. Joseph, it was for, the good. So God used that. And with that in mind, coming back to St. Joseph now and how he can help with adoration, you said something beautiful, that St. Joseph was the first adorer of Jesus. And we know that, at Christmas time, everyone seems to be like, Catholics at Christmas time because they want to adore Jesus. Oh, come, let us adore him. And, with Mary, the round young virgin. And recently I saw a church that on their tabernacle key, to open up where they keep the host in the tabernacle, on the keychain, it had an image of St. Joseph. And I thought that was so perfect that, because Joseph is like the guardian of the first tabernacle of Mary. So can you speak a little bit more about how does Joseph help with adoration, or what is his role nowadays with Adoration Chapels?
Every time that we started a chapel, because a lot of times we had difficulty convincing the priest that they needed a chapel, but maybe it was because they knew it was inviting them to the cross. And because he's a terror of demons, he helped us with many, many chapels. In fact, one, I can talk about it now, but oh my goodness. When I was in San Francisco, I met this priest, and he was the one that spoke to all the exorcist priests in the United States, and him and I made friends. And he gave me his personal phone number. He said, look, if ever you run across a priest or somebody that you have problems with, here, let them call me and I will help. So sure enough, when I get back to Kansas, we get a call to go to Missouri. And while we were in Missouri, we ran across a Eucharistic minister that was living in the rectory of the basement of the church. And this priest didn't know that he was involved in Satanism. He belonged to a cult. And one day they found the church had been, all the hosts were taken out and they were streamlined into a pentagram. And that, talk about panic and freaking me out, because I knew this was, okay, this is why that priest told me to call. So we called him, hooked him up with the people that were involved. They literally had to expose what was going on. I'm not real sure if the priest was aware of it, but I think somehow he must have been, because the bishop got wind of it. They dealt with that, took care of it, and we got adoration. But my friend that I work with, she's very sensitive to evil, and she felt it the minute we walked in the rectory, because we were having dinner there. And so that was just one instance, but there were a lot more things that happened, and that gets, when it gets kind of scary. But St. Joseph was a big part of helping us, because we prayed that prayer every day. I have to tell you about, because one of my dear friends, Monsignor Josefino Ramirez, was commissioned by John Paul II to promote devotion to St. Joseph all over the world. So when I met him, he commissioned me immediately, just because I mentioned Joseph. St. Joseph was with us. And he said that he would be a good partner for you in adoration. Because at the time I wasn't really sure, and I didn't really know he was the first adorer of the Blessed Sacrament. Those are things that you should learn when you're little, but I didn't learn it because I wasn't paying attention. But then I realized he's got something here. So we just started praying, and I started spreading devotion to St. Joseph with it's called the Holy Cloak Novena. And as I prayed it, every time we went into a church, it made it easier, because with his help, I would have whoever was working in the committee would start praying to St. Joseph, and that made it so much easier. And we never failed with him as our leader. And so, and it was all silent. And I have such a love for him, because as a single mother, we didn't have a dad in the family. And I needed him and I relied on him. I didn't know the theology of St. Joseph, but I knew St. Joseph personally because he was there for me and my son. Every day we prayed that prayer on the way to school. He knew St. Joseph personally, and I did too. So, he's a big part of my life.
And Celia, you mentioned that St. Joseph helped you in that regard, and you mentioned your son. Now, I think your son got back from Egypt, of all places, not too long ago. So I can't help thinking that St. Joseph, who's been to Egypt, he was probably watching over your son there. So can you give us
Yes.
just a 20-second snippet of what was your son doing in Egypt?
My son is unbelievable. For somebody that doesn't go to church, he both tries to believe like his dad, but yet he doesn't because he has a foundation. My son knows St. Joseph very well, but when he went to Egypt, he didn't realize. I kept saying, do you realize Jesus and Joseph were there? And he's, yeah, mom, yeah, mom. So he has a love. His heart is so big and he has no idea. And he told me the other day, I found all those miraculous medals in my bed. You and St. Joseph, you're always on my case. And I said, yeah, because, he didn't have his dad around. So he needed a father. I just recently saw the movie. I have to bring this up because it was a movie of healing for me. There's a point in that film where Father Stu, before he's a priest, he's getting baptized and he's trying to put this tie on. And I will never forget the day that my son, every day my dad would tie the tie and then we just take it off his head and put it on him. And then he had to go to school. Otherwise he'd get a demerit. So Father Stu is on the phone telling his mother, why didn't you teach me how to do a tie? But that wasn't her mission or purpose. The dad was, but he wasn't in the family. And it hit me like a ton of rocks because I remember going and getting in the car, running to St. Patrick and praying to St. Joseph that there would be a man there so that he could tie my son's tie. And there was a man. But later the Lord told me that was St. Joseph. That wasn't a gardener because there's never been a gardener there in front. But he was in front before school started, which has never happened. And he helped me do the tie. And years later, I discovered that was St. Joseph because I was praying to St. Joseph, help me find somebody to do this tie for my son. And that was when he first started going to school. Of course, later, then we got the clip on, but they would get a demerit if they didn't have a tie. And he was all of 7 years old. And so there's one more story. You have to hear this. When my son, it was Christmas time and he came running home and he said, Mom, you got to sit down. I have some incredible news for you. And I said, okay, I'm sitting down. He said, I got the role of St. Joseph for Christmas. And I was just overwhelmed and so happy because I know that St. Joseph has been a real father to my son. And I know him personally. And I don't know his theology. I'm learning, and thanks to Father Calloway, but I'm learning all about St. Joseph and I can't get enough of him, but I know him intimately because he has helped me through many, many things as a family and as adoration. I mean, he's just unbelievable. And he's done many miracles for me. I'm telling you, as a single mom, he's the one you go to because he will help. And he's helped me through many, many things. And like getting things done for free and bartering. And there's, I didn't need the money because I would just pray and he would bring it up somehow, bring someone into my life to help me. So
Well, Celia, we're running out of time, so I better ask you the last question. And before I do, I just want to say that not only are you an apostle of adoration, you're also an apostle of St. Joseph, because I remember before the year of St. Joseph started, in conjunction with starting that Adoration Chapel in our old parish in Hong Kong, you sent us this book in the mail. You said, don't worry, I'll ship it to China. So it arrived on the slow boat to China, and it's called Consecration to St. Joseph. And you said, you got to read this book by Father Calloway, and, consecrate yourself to St. Joseph. So we received that book you sent us. Thank you so much. And we did our family consecration. And then later we did our whole parish consecration. And so, Celia, I just want to say publicly right here in the carpenter shop that a lot of this exists because of you. So you never know what good deed you do by, when you probably shipped that book at your Wichita post office all the way to China, you probably thought, well, I'll send this book, hope they'll at least read it. You never know. And here we are talking on this Cuppa Joe carpenter shop show because of that little thing you did that day, which was really a big thing. And I think St. Joseph is such a good example for all of us, particularly as men. He doesn't do big stuff. He does little things so well that they kind of grow into big things. So with that said, Celia, what's next for you? Any big plans or dreams on the horizon? Maybe 10 more Adoration Chapels? I think the first time I ever heard you talk at the Midwest Catholic Family Conference, I told my wife, I said, sweetie, we got to go see this talk. This lady started like 30 Adoration Chapels. So now I guess you've doubled it since you're up to 60. So what's on your horizon? Do you want to do more Adoration Chapels? Do you want to write a book about all your adventures? Joseph dreamed dreams. So what would be your dream come true?
My mom, well, mostly, I mean, I don't know if this is for real, but yes, it is a dream. I would love to do a movie, do hair for a movie, but a religious movie. I was so jealous when I saw The Passion of the Christ. I just wanted to cry because I thought, why didn't I get to do that movie? So guess who came to town? Jim Caviezel. And I met him and I didn't know how to talk. It's like when you meet somebody, you can't say anything. And I gave him your book on Joseph, the only copy I had. I gave it to him.
Oh, that's funny.
It is. I wrote it, and it was a sacrifice because I didn't want to give it up. But I said, okay, Jim, here's a book. And, I wrote the information. And Father Calloway asked me to also give Jim Caviezel a book on consecration to Joseph. And then I knew Eduardo Verastughi because they're best friends and they're going to do a film together. So I wrote all this information and handed it to him, but I couldn't talk. I was just dumbfounded because when you're around this man, he has the eyes of Christ. He's a very spiritual man, very unbelievable. But anyway.
And he, for those who don't know, he's the actor who played Jesus Christ in the movie The Passion.
Yes.
And right. He's coming out. So you're giving the man who played Jesus the book on his earthly father, Joseph. So that's so beautiful.
But it's also kind of funny because like, why would Jesus need to do this? But I'm thinking, no, I'm going to do it. So anyway, come to find out that he went to see Father Capon, and I was praying for that. He did go see Father Capon's crypt, and then he heard the story and he was absolutely blown away. And so they gave him a book on Father Capon. He took it and then he said, could I have another one from Mel Gibson? And so, yes, I think, okay, maybe the next step will be that they'll come here and make a movie on Saint Father Capon whenever it happens. And I thought, that's okay, whatever, Lord, I don't care. I've given up every hope of, it's not important anymore. It was at one time, but it's not now. But I do have to write a book, and I know without a doubt that the Lord wants this book written because I've tried 3 times to wrote the manuscript and somehow it got lost or somebody threw it away, and just all kinds of things have happened. But I know that daily I'm living this book, and it's basically about, everybody's going to think it's a secular book on gossip behind my chair. That's the name of it. But in essence, it's about what happened to me as I found God, my clients found God, and now it's a book about all the miracles that happen daily in my chair, behind my chair. And it'll be a beautiful book, and I know that the Lord wants it because he's told me many times and showed me, and I do dream. I have St. Joseph sleeping, the sleeping St. Joseph. So I have all these prayer petitions where now he's falling over on the edge because I put all my petitions and hopes and dreams under him. And so it's up to him to, whatever happens, happens. I don't care at this point. But I see God using me to speak to hairdressers and anybody that will listen, because if I can promote him yeah, I will.
That's so beautiful. And you're actually in your salon right now, and you're sitting in the chair. So I look forward to reading that book called Behind the Chair. And I just thank you so much for all the great work you've been doing. You've blessed so many people, and I just want to encourage you to keep it up. I look forward to that book and hopefully a movie. So that's so fantastic. Thank you so much for dropping into the carpenter shop today and having a really nice Cuppa Joe with us. And I
Cup of
invite you,
water.
friends, as I always like to close the shows, don't forget, always go to Joseph. Peace.
Amen.
Thank you so
Thank
much, Celia.
Thank you.
Take care. God bless.
God bless you.